Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. One of the most contested topics across college football heading into the 2024 season is around this Oklahoma program and how they can adjust to the SEC year one in 2024. And you kind of listen to a lot of national media talking heads. They express a lot of concern about Oklahoma heading into the SEC. There's no doubt in anybody's mind that it's going to be a step up in level of competition. Certainly nobody's arguing that. That being said, I look at this Oklahoma roster and say, this is a team that can have year one success in the SEC, no doubt in my mind. And there are a couple of reasons why. And I want to preface this conversation with, I'm not necessarily sitting up here in the middle of July and taking Oklahoma to win the SEC. That being said, they are going to be a tough out every single Saturday for a lot of SEC programs. Want to get into some of the reasons why I'm a believer in Oklahoma heading into 2024. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Oklahoma fans. Y'all know I have a blast talking this program. You guys continue to show a ton of support. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, I would love to hear from everybody else in terms of how we think this Oklahoma team adjusts to the SEC. I understand this is a hot take. There are some differing opinions. Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. And without further ado, let's get into it. I got 5 reasons why I think Oklahoma has success in the SEC. And I think it starts with talent acquisition. And this shouldn't come as a surprise to many. You talk about winning, really in college football in general, specifically in the SEC, it starts with the Jimmies and Joes, right? If you don't have the talent to compete at the top end of the SEC, a large chance that you're not going to be competing up there. You look at Oklahoma and what they've done from a talent acquisition standpoint since Brent Venables has taken over this program, and you say, yeah, they're one of the more talented rosters that we see in the SEC. You take a look at the 2023 class, the number 4 class in the SEC. You take a look at 2024, the number 5 class in the SEC. You combine that with what Oklahoma has been able to do in the transfer portal over the last couple of years. You look at this roster from a talent standpoint, it's one of the more talented programs that we see in the SEC heading into 2024. And that's where it starts, right? You need to have the talent to just get your foot in the door in terms of top end programs in the SEC. I think Oklahoma has done that. Now, what are the specifics about this team and about this program that, I'm kind of believing in? I think it starts with line of scrimmage play. This move from Oklahoma going into the SEC did not take Brent Venables by surprise. He knew this is where it was going when he took over in Norman, and he has made a massive dedication and allocation of resources in terms of building both sides of the line of scrimmage, right? You look at the defensive line, you take a look at the recruiting classes in 2023, guys like PJ Adebawore. You look at 2024, guys like Jaden Jackson and David Stone, what I thought was maybe the best defensive line class that we saw in all the 2024 cycle. Brent Venables has made it very clear that he is going to put an emphasis, a premium on building the lines of scrimmage. You look on the offensive side of the football, a position group that you go back 6 months when this 2023 season was wrapping up, we had massive questions about what the Oklahoma offensive line would be heading into the SEC. And we still have some questions, but you look at what they did in the portal. They brought in 5 or 6 guys on the offensive line that have starting experience. And then you get some emergence of guys like Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor going into year 3. You kind of feel good about where the Oklahoma offensive line position is as well, and why you kind of feel so confident that Oklahoma, this version of Oklahoma with Brent Venables at the helm, can make the transition into the SEC. You look at the two kind of biggest safeguards in terms of teams at the top end of the SEC. It's one, talent acquisition. Oklahoma has certainly played their part in that. And I think second is the line of scrimmage play. You look at why Georgia, Alabama have controlled the SEC for the last, seemingly decade. It started with just dominating the line of scrimmage. I think Brent Venables certainly realized that and said, hey, before we get into the SEC, we got to make sure we're allocating a lot of resources to line of scrimmage play. And you're seeing the benefits of that kind of play out heading into 2024. I think number 3 is the year 3 bump, as I like to call it. You see this with a lot of head coaches. You look at Nick Saban, started out 7-6 his first year. His third year with the program, 14-0, won a national championship. You look at Kirby Smart, started out 8-5, ended up 11-3 his year 3. You look at Brent Venables, obviously a rough start. You go 10-3 in 2023, and you're kind of looking for another bump in the right direction in 2024. Why do I think that specifically is so important? Is I think it took Brent Venables a year or two. Obviously, I feel like people forget because Brent Venables has been around the game of college football, has been a marquee name across college football for so long. This is his third year of being a head coach. He is not a veteran, grizzled head coach that has a ton of experience running a program. He is largely learning on the fly. I think he's doing a really good job of it. But I think, secondly, it took Brent Venables a couple of years to get the culture right and get the staffing right. I think you even go back to last year with Oklahoma on the defensive side of the football. I think Coach Roof and Brent Venables kind of banging heads. I don't think there was a lot of chemistry in terms of what Oklahoma wanted to do on the defensive side of the football. He's made some tweaks, brings in a coach in Zach Alley, who you talk about guys having chemistry. I think Brent Venables and Coach Alley are going to have a lot of chemistry. You look at this coaching staff and say, I think he's got the recipe right. So at a coaching staff perspective, I think this is a really strong staff, and I think they're kind of all stepping in the right direction. Versus last year, just didn't seem like there was a ton of chemistry and continuity with that coaching staff. I think, secondly, you look at from a culture, from a locker room perspective with the players. This was a 180 in terms of how Lincoln Riley wanted to run this program to Brent Venables. We knew there were going to be some growing pains, right? You look under Lincoln Riley, there was a lot of push on the offensive side of the football, putting up a lot of points. And I think just from a personality standpoint, Brent Venables, Coach Riley, they ran the programs in vastly different ways. And so not only from an on-the-field perspective, but from a locker room perspective, there were going to be some growing pains. But I think going into year 3, that is when a lot of head coaches kind of figure out the right coaching staff, the right culture. I think for Oklahoma, especially with a coach who had never been a head coach before in Brent Venables, you kind of feel good that going into year 3, things are going to start figuring itself out. I think number 4 is quarterback play, and I want to couple quarterback play with really good talent around the quarterback, right? Jackson Arnold, I think a lot of people are sleeping on this Oklahoma program because many of them haven't really heard much about Jackson Arnold if they don't follow the recruiting trail. You guys know we've been rocking for the last 2 years that Jackson Arnold was my guy coming out of high school, and I think played a lot better in that bowl game against Arizona than even some Oklahoma fans would like to give credit. I mean, yes, did you see he was a true freshman? Did he make some true freshman mistakes? Absolutely. Threw for over 350 yards. His average depth of target in that game was 12 yards. They weren't giving him layup throws. He was asked to push the ball down the field, make some high-level throws, and he showed the ability to make some of those throws. From a pure ceiling and talent standpoint, I don't think it's crazy that we end this 2024 season talking about Jackson Arnold being a top 5 quarterback in the conference. Now, I'm not putting him there right now because we got to see it on the field in the SEC. But I think a lot of Oklahoma fans are sitting there and saying, yeah, Jackson Arnold, we feel pretty good about our quarterback position heading into 2024 when a lot of outsiders around the program look at Oklahoma and say, oh, we got some question marks at the quarterback spot. But on top of that, you look at the pass catchers and the talent around them. Gavin Sawchuk, an elite running back, in my opinion. You look at the wide receiver spot, Deion Burks, one of the more electric wide receivers you see in the country. Nick Anderson, Jaleel Farouk, Andrew Anthony when he comes back from injury. This wide receiver room is not only really talented, but it's really deep with a diverse set of skill sets. I mean, you look at Deion Burks, a guy that can not only win vertically, but win with the football in his hands. You look at Nick Anderson, one of the bigger, more physically imposing wide receivers you see in the country. You have some guys with legit track and field speed, Jaquez Petaway and Brennan Thompson. You have a guy in Jaleel Farouk who we've seen flashes of what he can do with the football in his hands. You just kind of didn't see it in 2023 as consistently. We all know he can play at a high level. I look at the wide receiver room and say, well, we got a lot of depth. We got a lot of talent. We got a lot of versatility. And then you look at the tight end room and say, that's probably the position that's most improved on the whole Oklahoma roster. And so you're looking at the talent around Jackson Arnold and say, well, hey, we feel pretty good about it. Last thing I want to talk about is, and I put a question mark next to it, is this going to be an elite pass rush? And I think this might be one of the bigger questions in terms of how good this Oklahoma team is in the SEC. We feel really good about the linebacker spot, obviously headlined by Danny Stutzman, but Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, Lewis Carter, like all guys that are young, that are extremely talented. We feel really good about the secondary, headlined by Billy Bowman Jr. and Peyton Bowen. What's this pass rush look like? Now, you look at, again, the top teams in the SEC over the last decade, they've all had elite pass rushes, right? Alabama and Georgia. Can Oklahoma be an elite pass rush unit? Now, you got Ethan Downs, who doesn't get it talked about, but was really solid for Oklahoma once again in the 2023 year. Maybe a little bit of an underperformance compared to what we saw in 2022, but he is still a plus pass rusher. You look at PJ Adebawore going into year 2. You look at our Mason Thomas going into year 3. You look at Caden Willer coming in through the portal. These are all guys that haven't necessarily put it together at the Power 5 level yet, but have a ton of ability. What if PJ Adebawore puts it together, or our Mason Thomas puts it together, or a guy like Caden Willer coming from the MAC puts it together? You're looking at a pass rush that could be one of the better units that we see in the SEC. And you couple that with a good linebacker room and a good secondary behind it, I think this Oklahoma defense could be very salty. And then on top of that, you have Brent Venables and Zach Alley kind of being on the same page a little bit more in terms of how they want this defense to look. I look at this Oklahoma team and say, there are a lot of reasons to believe in this Oklahoma program heading into the 2024 year. We'll obviously get to see it played on the field. It's a bear of a schedule. Oklahoma fans know that. It's every single Saturday. It is going to be an absolute battlefield. That's what you get in the SEC. This is a team that's going to be really fun to watch throughout the 2024 year. We'll cut it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.